What's going on, everybody? It's Adam from Free Weights and Freedom, coming to you today from the home office. Normally I'm outside getting a little walk on. I do a lot of my thinking when I'm on my walks. It just helps me concentrate a little bit more. Lets me think a little bit easier. But I wanted to come to you guys today from the house, and I wanted to follow up. So I did a video last week talking about my struggles with the transition from military to civilian life, and I gave out a little tip about a good way to find your purpose after the military, because that's what I struggled with the most was, what's my mission now? What's my purpose? Who am I? And, I asked 5 questions, and I just wanted to follow up on that. So the first question was who are you? That's the first and foremost thing. It sounds easy, but it's actually not. And I think a lot of it comes from the way we end up defining ourselves. I think it's just something that's it's natural to do, and for me, it took some failures after I got out of the military and some pretty major setbacks for me to finally realize that I was not defined by these 3 things. So for me, it was just 3 things right in a row that ended up have either what I consider a failure or a setback for me, and I was defining myself by those 3 things. So I'll just kind of break them down in order of how they went for me. So the first one was we tend to define ourselves by our occupation or our job. If you start talking to someone, then one of the first things they're going to ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" And you might say, "Hey, I'm Adam. I'm in the Army. I'm a soldier." That's how you kind of define yourself. And that's what I did for 20 years. I was a soldier. I was a warrant officer. And what happens though when that goes away? So for 20 years, that's what I was. And then when I got out, I realized, well, I'm no longer Adam, the warrant officer. I'm no longer a soldier. I'm no longer in the military. So now what am I? I kind of lost myself, compounded by the fact that I needed to get a job right away so I could get a house, and ended up taking, like I said last week, a job I hated. And this isn't not my current position. I'm talking back in 2015, and I have a few friends that I worked with, and they know what I'm talking about. It just wasn't. I felt like I was above it. I did not enjoy it. I felt like I went from being this, highly respected officer in the Army to basically nothing. I was not proud of what I was doing. I was embarrassed by it. I didn't want to tell I was embarrassed to tell my friends what I did, what my family did, and that's how I was defining myself. I felt like the job that I had defined me, and at this point now, I was basically defining myself as nothing, as a loser with this terrible job. Completely disregarding the facts, that it's your core values and your qualities and your characteristics that end up landing you the job that you have. I wouldn't have became an officer if I didn't have certain values or characteristics or traits. Whether that's, for me, it was a desire to serve. Loyalty meant a lot to me. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than what I was. I had a sense of duty. Honor, all the good Army values that we kind of laugh about in the military, but that, it's real. It's something real that we have inside of us. And that's what gets you the job anyway. You're not defined by what your occupation is. That's not you. You still have your sense of self. So that was the first thing I had to realize, was that I'm not defined by my occupation. So even so, good and bad. I was defining myself as an officer in the Army, which I felt was good. And then I was defining myself at the job I took right when I retired, which I thought was terrible. So neither one of those actually defined who I truly was as a person. So that's number one. Got out of the military, took a bad job, and that was my first, what I consider a failure or a setback. I thought I was going to walk into this great job. I did not, and I was at a very low point in my life. Next thing that happened, and this is going to sound kind of trivial to some of you guys, but obviously, fitness and working out was a big part of my life. It still is, obviously. That's why Free Weights and Freedom is what it is. It did something. It helped me physically. It helped me mentally. And like late summer 2015 or early 16, I had started having serious knee issues. I was working out a lot, and I got to the point where I could barely even, air squat a few inches without being in extreme pain. So I had to stop, I basically had to stop working out completely. It depressed me, and I know that might sound stupid to some of you guys, but it really did. It put me in a bad spot. It was something I enjoyed doing. It was something I loved doing, and when I couldn't do anymore, it really affected me. So I ended up, go to the doctor, and they, patella tendonitis in both knees, chondromalacia, whatever. The cartilage is degenerating. So I had to basically, not do anything for a long time. I had a pretty negative impact on my mental well-being. But then, and then even as we currently go, I tore my pec back in December. Small partial pec tear was bothering me, and it took my coach Patrick up in Minneapolis. We talked. He lives in Minnesota. Obviously, I'm here in Omaha, and we talked through Skype, once every couple weeks. And we talked about it, and I mentioned, hey, it used to really depress me, and it still bothered me because I was competing in powerlifting. I had a great meet last August in Des Moines. I wanted to build off of it, and I couldn't. I was having issues with my hip and my pec. And, he had to basically kind of wake me up and tell me, that's not what defines you. You're not defined, you're not Adam the powerlifter. You're not Adam the CrossFitter. Because honestly, if I defined myself as a powerlifter, that defined me, I'd be a pretty mediocre person, honestly. I'm not as strong as nearly as most of these guys are. I do all right, but if I define myself by my lifting, basically what I'm saying is I'd be a pretty average person. So that was number 2. I'm not defined by that. And, I'm talking about like weightlifting and fitness, but it could be another hobby, whether it's something you're just not able to do anymore. Just remember, that's not what you are. You're still at your core. You're still, those basic core values is what makes you up as a person. So that was number 2. That was right after, getting out of the Army, taking a shitty job. Now I'm hurt. I can't lift. So now it's just like boom, 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 domino effect. Then ended up getting divorced after that. A lot of issues went into that I won't really get into here. So then I was no longer, I also defined myself as, I'm Megan's husband. Or if you're in any relationship, you might, I'm such and such wife, I'm such and such husband. That's how sometimes you introduce yourself. So after that, after I got divorced, I felt once again like, man, I'm a failure. I was a failure as a husband. I was a failure at, the job I got was terrible. I'm failing, basically as a man. I felt like I let my kids down. Now there's custody issues, and they're going from house to house, week to week, and their Owen was, pretty young at that point. It made me feel pretty bad, as a father and as a man in general. So once again, I'm like, man, failure after failure. I felt like that defined me also. Now I'm like, man, you're a failure as a husband. And then I had to kind of like take some inventory, and it took me a while. This wasn't like something in a day where I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. It took me, a lot of time, a lot of, self-reflection, some thinking, a lot of friends that I was able to talk to. And you're not defined, once again, you're not defined by the relationship that you're in. So there were qualities, and there's qualities and characteristics that you have that obviously make somebody attracted to you. And it's the same with the other person. And that's why you are in a relationship to begin with. If that does end, or, you're no longer in the relationship, that doesn't mean you lose your sense of self. You know what I mean? You're still who you are deep down. Does it hurt? Obviously, yes. It was a devastating experience for me. Something that took me a long time to get over, but I had to realize that I wasn't defined by the relationship that I was in with that other person. Yeah, it's great when you have that bond, but you're still two separate people. You have your own self, your own characteristics, and your own traits. So try not to ramble on here about that, but let me do a little recap. So that was the first question I asked, was who are you? So now you can kind of go back and think about that, truly who you are, not what your job is, not what your hobby is, not what your relationship is, but who you are as a person. Because then that's gonna what carries you forward when you actually do go on to whatever your next endeavor is after the military. For me, it was starting a nonprofit because, like I said, I love to serve. I want to help, first responders, police, fire, EMS, spouses, and veterans. I love what they do. I did it for 20 years. I get it, and I just think there can be more done, and that's what drives me now. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't, maybe if I didn't go through those different struggles and come to that realization of, okay, here's who I truly am deep down. So in conclusion and summary, let me wrap this up because it's getting a little long, but once again, you're not defined for, and I'm speaking strictly, I'll go strictly military to civilian life. Is that, that doesn't define you as a person. Yes, it's great. And I enjoyed it and loved it. And you guys should be proud of what you did. But hey, the time comes, man, when it's time to take the uniform off and you got to do something else, man. So just lean back on those qualities and traits that made you a good leader, that made you a good soldier, and go forward from there. I'll keep doing these. I want to dig into those 4 other questions, but right now, hey, ask yourself, if anything, just ask yourself after this video, who am I? Who am I truly? I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate the support. I'll talk to you later.